Thanks, Allie. I'd like to welcome everyone on this Monday morning, and I'm excited to talk to you guys about our new legging slopers and how to actually make really awesome fitting leggings for your wardrobe. So here's just a quick overview of what I'm going to be covering today. I'm going to be talking a little bit about what is a legging sloper. Sometimes a sloper is sort of an industry term that, not everyone knows. And I'm going to show you how to determine your size of what comes in the legging sloper. It comes in Berta style sizing, and I'll just show you how to best determine your size. I'll introduce you to this little tool called the stretch gauge, which is super handy when purchasing fabrics, especially for leggings. So you can take it when fabric shopping, and it's super helpful. I'll talk a little bit about what fabric is best for leggings, and I'm going to show you how to actually take your own personal body measurements and implement them on the legging sloper so you can really get a perfect fitting legging. And I'll show you how to draft legging designs. I'll show you sewing techniques. I'll demonstrate a complete sort of legging draft and sew together so you can see a complete garment, and I'll show you how to grade sizes up and down if, let's say, this legging sloper is only available in Berta style sizes 34 to 44. Well, what if you're a 32 or a 30 or larger than a 44? I'll show you how to grade up and down those sizes. And I'll just quickly show you how to easily turn this legging sloper into shorts and or capris. So super easy and fun, and let's get started. So here is just the technical image of the legging sloper, and what a sloper is it's basically a template. It's a sewing pattern which has no sort of style lines, no seam allowance. It's just the basic outline of, a basic garment shape. So on Berta style, we have our bodice sloper, skirt sloper, pant sloper, and we've just now introduced our knit sloper. So here is our legging sloper. So it's just really an outline of a leggings pattern which you can, use to further establish fit, and it's a really great starting point for designing. So if you want to start designing paneled leggings for the gym or for fashion, a legging sloper is a fantastic starting point because you have those basic reference points on the pattern, like your knee and where your hip line is, your waistline, etc. So it's really easy to plot style lines according to your sketch and create awesome leggings from them. So that's just a quick overview of what a sloper is. And what I like to do once, I've tested a sloper out, let's say I take this legging sloper and I measure myself and I put those measurements on the sloper and make adjustments, and I've sewn it up and it fits. What I then do is take that, paper pattern, and I actually put it on, cardstock or, Bristol board, something a little bit more heavy duty, and trace out that outline without seam allowance. So I can really easily go back and just simply trace out the outline and start a new leggings design or shorts or whatever you want. So that's just something you can do after you've perfected the fit of your leggings. Because I will tell you, once you make one pair of leggings, you will be making another one because they are so easy and they look awesome. And you don't need like special machines. I have sewn complete leggings that stretch and the seams don't pop with a regular sewing machine, and I'll show you different settings on your sewing machine that you can do. Don't think you need all these, a serger and cover stitch machine are, ideal, but they're not necessary. Sewing machines do come with zigzag stitches and stretch stitches that are really great in spandex fabric. So just to let you guys know, don't be limited by your sewing machine. You can do it just fine with your regular single needle. So here is our legging sloper, and you will get a copy of the legging sloper in the thank you email, the PDF, and it's about, I would say, like 25 pages. And if you guys probably have used Berta style patterns before, you just simply tile them together, and there are 6 sizes available, 34 to 44, and you can see all the different size lines. The smallest size is, the most inner line, and the largest is the most outer line. So here I have just tiled my legging sloper together. And so here I've just outlined, I have taken the Berta style size chart right off our website, and I've just outlined in a box what sizes are available. So these come in a size 34 to 44. And when referencing this particular size chart on bertastyle.com in relation to our legging sloper, I do actually suggest going down one size. I, referenced the size chart, and I made a legging sloper size, what the size chart indicated my size would be, and it was actually a little too big. I think it all actually depends on the amount of stretch that is in your fabric. So I actually do suggest going down a size because the legging sloper is really suitable for these really stretchy spandex fabrics, and it just fits really better if you just go down a size. I even had, sort of a poly lycra mix, and it wasn't that stretchy, and I still went down a size and it still fit better. So for example, my waist is 29 inches and my hip is 39 inches, so I should be cutting a size 40, which I did the first time, but found the leggings to be a bit big, especially in the crotch area. There was, that kind of fold that happens, and so when I just cut the size down, it was really nicely fitting, and I got a smooth, line. I didn't get that bagginess around, the hip line. So I would suggest maybe going a size down if you are making just sort of basic leggings out of spandex. And so here's a little note at the bottom. If your fabric has 30 to 50% stretch factor, you do want to use your usual size. So this is sort of, maybe even a cotton, spandex mix, those fabrics with just like a little bit of stretch, you might want to cut your size. But if your fabric has 50 to 70% stretch factor, go down one size. And if your fabric has 70 to 100% stretch factor, go down two sizes. So this is for your super stretchy knits. These are for those spandexes that you see in swimwear and activewear and, bodysuits, that type of thing. And when I'm talking about the stretch factor, that is going back to the stretch gauge, which I'm going to talk about in these next slides. So here is the stretch and recovery gauge, and this is used to determine the stretch and recovery factor of knits. A tip that I have is actually print this out and glue to cardboard and then take it with you when shopping for knit fabrics. I will attach a PDF of this stretch gauge to scale, so you can simply print it off. You'll get that in the thank you email as well. So the stretch factor is the amount of stretch per inch that occurs when the knit is stretched to its max length and width. And the recovery factor is the degree to which a knit will return to its original shape after being stretched. So if you go into your closet and you pull out just a t-shirt, usually t-shirt cotton knits don't have a great recovery. You wear it, that tight t-shirt once and then it bags throughout the day. It doesn't bounce back, so that fabric doesn't have great recovery. So for leggings, you do want a good recovery. You don't want saggy leggings at the end of the day. So you really want a knit that really bounces back after being stretched. So for making successful and comfortable leggings, don't use fabric with less than a 30% stretch factor. So this is for your fashion leggings if you just want to wear them, out. But if you are making athletic leggings, for running or the gym, don't use a spandex that has less than 50% stretch factor and not good recovery. So just some tips on how you want to use your leggings sloper. So I'm going to show you how to actually use this stretch and recovery gauge now. It's a really handy tool. I always use it before I make leggings because it determines, how many sizes I need to go down, etc. So you fold your spandex along a grain line and pin mark a space 5 inches wide. So you see I have my nice bright spandex here, and I've just used a sewing gauge, and I have it folded along, the lengthwise grain right now. You're going to want to do this on the lengthwise and crosswise grain to find your fabric's direction of greatest stretch, because this will later determine how you place your leggings pattern on the fabric. So You want to do this for both grain lines. So I'm just doing this one at the lengthwise for now. So I have my pins 5 inches apart, folded on my fabric. And then you place fold of knit on stretch gauge at 5 inches marks on the left half of the gauge. So you see on the gauge, there's these 2 marks, you place your pins right on them. And then you use your hands. One hand is on the left of the left pin and your other hand is on the right of the right pin. And you are just going to stretch it and note where the pin stretches to. So you're going to stretch your fabric, you know, as much as it will go, as a comfortable stretch. I mean, you could like really stretch it, but just stretch it as much as, you know, the fabric sort of wants to bounce back to. That's the point when you can determine the stretch factor. So you hold the knit firmly at the edge of the gauge and stretch fabric without distorting it. So, you know, you don't want to overstretch. And then you note the distance determined by the pin where the fabric stretches to in terms of percentage. So, you know, you can have it 18, 25, 50, etc. And this will determine the fabric's stretch percentage factor. So this spandex right here I'm using has a 30% stretch factor. So this is good. Has a good stretch to it. So again, do this for both cross and lengthwise grain. So fold along, put your pins, and this is in relation to the selvage. So you want to do it perpendicular to the selvage and then parallel to the selvage. So, and then again, a quick note, if a knit doesn't have good recovery in relation to 50 to 100% stretch factor in one or both directions, don't consider it for, you know, athletic wear or swimwear. It'll sag rather than contour to the body. And I'm going to go back a slide to determine the recovery factor. So when you release the pin, if it doesn't bounce back to its original position, that means it doesn't have, you know, recovery. A good recovery is when it bounces back to maybe 5% or original position. If you let go and it just sort of goes back to about, you know, 20 or 10%, that means that that fabric doesn't have good recovery. So you stretch it to its max and then you let it go and determine if it bounces back to the original pin position. So again, that's how you determine your recovery. And then again, you do this on both grains because you want to know which grain actually has the greater stretch, so the greater stretch percentage, and that is where you're going to place your leggings pattern on your fabric. So I've determined, you know, that my crosswise grain has the direction of greatest stretch, so I'm going to position my legging sloper, you know, widthwise. You don't want the direction of greatest stretch sort of lengthwise in your leggings. You don't want the stretch from your ankle to your waist. You want it around your body. So, you know, that's how you determine where to place your pattern on your fabric. So what fabric should I use? And again, for obvious reasons, only use fabrics with stretch in it. You do want to avoid jerseys. I have made some leggings in jerseys, and I have just found they are too thin of a fabric. You don't want, you know, to bend down in your jersey leggings and, you know, they become see-through when they get stretched a little too much. So I would avoid jerseys. And you just really want to look for any sort of blend of, you know, 10 to 20% spandex or lycra. And sometimes, you know, fabric stores won't say, so just ask someone, and they should have the fabric information on how much spandex or lycra is in your fabric. And I always lean towards a nylon spandex blend, but a poly blend is good as well. So I would look for, you know, nylon or poly blend. You could even look for a cotton blend as well, but sometimes I find they're a little bit itchy. Nylon is definitely the best. I've used nylon spandex blends for leggings for years, and they're really comfortable, they're breathable, and they're not itchy. Nobody likes itchy leggings, so I would avoid cotton blends. And, you know, stretch it in the fabric store. It is easy to determine if appropriate for leggings. So you just bring your stretch gauge and, you know, you stretch it. If it has, you know, more than If it has 30 to, 100% stretch factor, it's totally great for leggings. So that's what you can determine by. And if you are paneling leggings, so you have leggings in, various, you want style lines and you're paneling different, spandexes together, just make sure they have similar stretch factor. So, if you have two fabrics and you want to put them in the same pair of leggings, make sure they're in the same 10% of stretch. They don't need to be identical, but they just need to have sort of, similar. You don't want to use a spandex with 10% stretch and then one with 70. So just be conscious of that when choosing fabrics that, you're paneling together. And here's some classification of knit fabrics. So what it's really suitable for leggings are stretchy knits. And so these have, a stretch factor of 50% on the crosswise and also 18 to 50% on the lengthwise. So you can use a fabric that only has a good amount of stretch in, one direction, because you don't really need stretch from waist to ankle. And it's stretchy and lightweight, so it drapes and contours the body. So this is, for example, a cotton spandex, nylon spandex. What's best, I find, is these super stretch knits, and they have a stretch factor of 100% on the cross and lengthwise grain. These are four-way directional stretch fabrics. They have excellent recovery. I'll show you some resources online where I purchase all my super stretch knit fabrics for my leggings. And it's just really any fiber blended with a decent amount of spandex or lycra. Spandex and lycra are the exact same thing. Lycra is just a trademark. They've trademarked, spandex, the elastane, that's the fiber woven into the fabric. And so where do I buy leggings fabric? So spandexhouse.com and Spandex World are just super great places to buy spandex. And I'll just show you, I'll just open this link really quick. Spandex World has a fabulous fabric that is really leather looking. So it's actually a matte metallic spandex. So if you go to Spandex World, you'll see lots of fun prints. I love crazy printed leggings, but you can see right in here. And if you go to metallic spandex, you always want to click four-way stretch. And I'll show you the fabric that's just super great for leather look. So you scroll down, and it's actually this four-way metallic spandex matte. So if you want sort of a leather look, you don't want to go to these shiny fabrics. You want to go to matte. This is my favorite spandex right here. So you can go and purchase that. It's, as you can see, it's really not that expensive, $13 a yard. One pair of leggings, a yard, and a quarter. That's all you need. So and you can see this has really great information. So it has 20% spandex, 80% nylon. That's a great amount of spandex. So it actually is that 100% stretch factor. So this is my favorite leggings fabric if you want those cool leather looking leggings. But this website and the other one have super great spandexes. So those are two great online sources for you guys, because sometimes in your local fabric store they often don't have a great selection of knit fabrics. So always go to online for those specialty fabrics. All right, so I just showed you a little bit about how to determine your size off of your off of the Berta Style size chart. Now I'm going to show you how to actually custom fit your legging sloper to your measurements. So you're going to need 4 measurements. You're going to need to measure your waist, hip, inseam, and crotch to waistline measurement. And you want to measure your waist and hip in circumferences, and the other ones are sort of these lengthwise measurements that you don't need a circumference in. So here I've just taken my measurements as an example: waist 29, hip 39, inseam 29, crotch to waistline 11. And so this is right from where your crotch seam would be up to your natural waist. I always like leggings up to the natural waist because I find if they're any lower than my natural waist. They sort of cut off, but by all means, if you like leggings that don't come up to, your belly button, then just measure from your crotch up to where you want your leggings to sit on your torso. So you can do that measurement that way. So, and these are our measurements for our body, and we are going to implement them on the legging sloper, but we do need to accommodate for the stretch in our fabric. So we need to calculate this thing called negative ease for our horizontal measurements. So example, the pattern needs to be a bit smaller than our body for those leggings to really fit. So we're actually utilizing the stretch in the fabric to get a great fit. So we're going to calculate negative ease to implement on our sloper. So calculating negative ease. So this only needs to be done to the waist and hip measurements. You don't need to implement negative ease on, your lengthwise measurements because they're not really stretching. They're just, lengthwise on our body. So you want to take into consideration the stretch factor in your fabric when doing this as well. So the stretch factor in most of my fabric is about 90%. So I'm just going to sort of do that as a whole. But if you find yourself, using your legging sloper for more fashion leggings, not too much stretch, not those really super stretch fabrics, then you can, do the calculation of 0.95 instead of 0.9 for a 90% stretch factor. The 0.95 is for, a 60 to 70% stretch. And if you have a 100% stretch in your fabric, you can calculate 0.85. That just takes out more, more of the measurement. So, and if you have any fabric below 60% stretch factor, it isn't actually enough to use, a pattern with negative ease. So you cut the leggings to your waist and hip measurements. So when I'm calculating negative ease and I divide those measurements by 2, if your fabric is below 60% stretch factor, you don't need to take out that negative ease. You can just simply take your hip and waist measurement and divide it by 2 and use those measurements to use on your pattern. So to calculate it, you just need to do it on your waist and hip. So my waist is 29 inches, so I'm going to take my 29 times 0.9, which gives me 26. So the leggings at my waist need to measure 26 inches. So you divide by 2 to get the pattern measurement. So 26 divided by 2 is 13 inches. So my legging sloper along my waistline needs to measure 13 inches. And again, if you're not calculating negative ease, just take your measurement, for example, your waist measurement 29, and divide that by 2, and that's what you put on your leggings. And again, your hip is 39 inches. I have determined that my, with negative ease, my pattern measurement for my hip needs to be 17 and a half. So you just sort of jot those measurements down and you have them next to you with your legging sloper. And so now we are going to go to our legging sloper. We have this out, and I'm going to take my measuring tape, and you want to locate your hip measurement first. So what I have done, and I have just located where the hip line is on my pattern, and it's about where the curve is starting, with the crotch seam. So I've located, right at the start of the curve. So it's about right here, about 2.5 inches up from the crotch or so on the smallest size. So I just lay my measuring tape and I just sort of center it on the size lines, and wherever the 17.5 measurement is for my hip sort of aligns on a size line, that's where I'm going to mark my legging sloper. So you locate your hip line, the start of the curve. Let's say, yours is, 19. You would sort of center it, and maybe your measuring tape would hit this size and about 19 on the same size line on that. So you're just sort of finding the size line which best fits your half hip measurement, if that makes any sense. And so then you just make a little mark where your size line is in relation to your half hip measurement. So you just draw a little dash on this side and as well on the other side. So here's on my front. And then using that size as a guideline, I'm just going to follow it up and actually extend the line up into my waist. So I'm extending the waistline a little bit. And then I am going to place my measuring tape perpendicular to the paper pattern, and I'm going to measure up that size line until I get that measurement where I've measured my crotch to my waistline. So now I'm determining the height of the waistline of my leggings. So I've just, placed my measuring tape, and I've measured up that size line as a guide, and mine is 11 inches. So I just mark, a little mark right there. And then I measure the distance from my marking right here. So mine was 11 inches, and I'm going to measure the distance between that and the size line that I used as a guide for my hip. And so that, difference is about 1 3/8 of an inch. And so I connect those, and so that's again 1 3/8 of an inch, and then I extend the back up 1 3/8 of an inch. Because if you do that same 11 inches measurement, I tried, and it actually fell in my pattern because the back crotch seam is always larger than the front, because we have our bum to accommodate for. So you're just extending it up the same amount that you did for the front once you've determined your crotch to waistline measurement. So I've extended now my back up along that same size line guide that I used for my hip. I've just extended that up and marked, that difference. And then you just connect those with a straight line, or you can follow the curve, but I like to just connect them with a straight line. It makes it easier for when we actually add, the legging band to our waistline. So just connect those 2 points with a straight line now. And then what we're going to do is we are going to measure the waistline. So I'm going to measure that line that we just drew from, our vertical size lines, again, that we used for our hip reference. So I've measured that distance, and it's 15 inches. And in my calculation for my waist measurement, it needs to measure 13 inches to accommodate my negative ease. So what I need to do is I need to determine the difference between the measurement of my pattern and what the measurement of my waistline needs to be. So that's 2 inches. So I just, divide that by 2, and so that's 1 inch. So I'm just going to bring in, each side in 1 inch. So you just determine the difference and divide by 2, and you need to equalize that measurement and take it in that equal distance on the front and the back. You don't just want to take it, I just don't want to, measure out 15. I don't want to just take it right back to 13 all in the front. I need to equalize that. So I've just made markings 1 inch in on either side. So now these two marks indicate my new waistline. So it's 13 inches distance between them, which is perfect. And now we need to blend in with our hip measurement. So we're actually creating, a personalized crotch seam that accommodates our waist measurement and our hip measurement. So we just connect those with a hip curve or a French curve. So I've taken, the start base of my curve where I've indicated my hip, and I've just made a smooth transition up into my waistline. And you do that for the front and the back. So I have, this new crotch seam. And so, again, that we've just used this as a guideline because sometimes we don't know where our waist measurement is going to fall on here because our waist isn't going to be at this seam right here. So we need to determine where our waist is and then do that widthwise measurement along that line. So that's why we do that first. And now I actually find the legging sloper a bit short. Even I'm a short girl, I'm only about 5'3", I still find it a bit short, so you're going to want to extend the hem. So I've just taped on some additional paper and then using that same size guideline that we used, we're going to extend those lines down into our pattern. So I've just, used that same hip guideline and turned that crotch point and, went down that size line to the hem and extended. So I've done that both on back and on front. And funny enough, this actually is the size line 38, which I earlier determined was the best size for me once I've cut it. I should be cutting a size 40 according to the My Berta Style measurements, but 38 fit me better. And ironically, when I used my own body measurements and calculated that ease, the 38 was my guideline. So you can see how that works as well. So you extend those lines, and then from crotch point, have your measuring tape at 0, measure along that line, and make a marking for your inseam measurement. So this is right from your crotch right to your ankle. If you like your leggings long, add a couple inches. Some people like that little bunch at their ankle. Some people don't. I prefer not to. So I've just measured right to my ankle, and it's 29 inches, so I make a mark there. I do that same 29-inch mark reference on my back side, and I just connect those with a straight line. And this is my new hemline. So now I know that my legging is the perfect length for my body, and the width and the crotch seam to waist is all perfect. So now I have, my leggings sloper all personalized to my measurements, which is just fantastic. And so now I actually like to cut it out because it's a little bit easier to, trace onto new paper. You don't just want to go ahead and, trace all your style lines and everything on this. You want to keep this as your template. So, this you can do a test sew of, just cut in a spandex and sew it up and see how it fits. And then you can, transfer it onto something a little bit more permanent. But if you want to do, if you want to turn this into shorts, don't just simply cut this pattern right, right here, because we've done all that work to determine the inseam. So just trace out a new pattern and do those alterations to the trace off. So now we have our perfect fitting legging sloper. We've done all that work and calculation. Now it's time to have fun. So I've created this sort of legging sloper design template, and I'll include it in your thank you email so you can, print off as many as you have. I sort of have a book of them because I love to design leggings. So they're just the template of the legging, the leggings sloper, and you can actually just draw in whatever style lines of panels that you want in your leggings. So just get creative, and each leg doesn't even have to be different. I mean, it doesn't even have to be the same. You can do asymmetrical. The possibilities are endless when designing leggings. And these ones are shorts. I've just kind of scribbled out the legs, but just go ahead and design all the leggings that you want. And I'm going to show you how to actually bring these leggings designs that you have to life. So I'm going to actually show you an example how to draft these leggings right here, because I love a leggings band. I'm not the biggest fan of, serging in an elastic and, flipping it down. I find that cuts my body off a little bit more, but this wide band is really slimming. So I'm going to show you how to obviously do both ways, but I will show you how to do a band, which is actually great for maternity wear as well. So if you are expecting, this is a great maternity legging with that band that's extremely accommodating. So first, I'm just going to kind of ease you into how to add style lines with a very simple design. So I have two spandexes here. I have a nice maroon and a mesh, and I just have this knee panel. So I just want mesh on my knees. And so I'm just going to add a simple style line. So what I do is I take tracing paper and I put it over top of my legging sloper, and I trace out my outline. And I always want to include my grain line as well. So I have my grain line and I have my outline of my new personalized size. And I have my design template right here so I can easily reference it as well. And then since it's my knee, your knee is usually the halfway distance between your crotch and your hem, your ankle. So I have just simply folded, this point to this point, and you can see the little crease, and I've just indicated my knee points on either side. So that's an easy way you can determine your knee point. Just fold them in half, or just measure, along your body from ankle up or crotch down. So I want my knee panel to be centered on my knee, so I've just, taken that measurement and measured, 2.5 inches on either side on each seam of my leggings as well. So I've created my panel. So you can see how in your sketch, you can sort of reference on your sketch, okay, that panel is in the middle of my legging, and so you can kind of visualize this flat legging sloper as the sketch, so you can determine differences and, reference points on the pattern to determine style line locations so it relates back to the sketch. So this panel looks very similar to the sketch now. And then so you want to then do additional trace offs. You don't just want to cut this pattern up because we need to add seam allowances, etc. And maybe later on I want to elaborate on this design. So I like to keep this bottom one intact, and I do a separate trace off of all my separate panels. So I've just put additional tracing paper over top, and I've just traced out my bottom section, and I label it right away. I don't, leave all my labeling till after. And I, include my grain line as well. I shift my paper down. I label and, trace out my middle leg inserts and do my grain line again, and then my top piece as well. And I include my grain line as well. So I'm going to show you how to draft leggings accommodating an elastic band. So what you want to do is actually measure your elastic width. So here it's 1 inch. So that's how much, allowance you need to add to the top of your leggings. So 1 inch, so I've added 1 inch on the top of my leggings, like so. And then you add, a 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch on, either side. Sorry, not either side, but all the other edges on your sloper, except for the hem. So if you are serging it together, I would do a test serge and measure your serging width. So mine is 1/4 of an inch, so that's how much seam allowance I'm going to add. If you are not using a serger, I do suggest adding 3/8 of an inch. So that gives you a nice amount to, to do your zigzag stitch or your stretch stitch. If you're using a serger, use 1/4 of an inch. If not, use 3/8 of an inch. So I have all my pieces, labeled and add seam allowance, and on the hem I always use 3/4 of an inch. I just think a 3/4 of an inch hem on leggings, it's the best. I've tried, multiple widths, and 3/4 of an inch is the best, but obviously you can use whatever hem allowance that you like. Just remember what you've added so you can turn it up that amount when you're sewing it. So now I've just, quickly, I haven't really done the stretch test on camera here, but I have done it, and I'm just kind of showing you guys how, you need to stretch your fabric to know the direction of greatest stretch. Once you sort of get advanced, I sometimes don't even do, the exact determining stretch factor. I just sort of take the fabric and stretch it one way and then stretch it the other way, and it's really easy to determine which, grain line has this greatest stretch to it. So I've determined that. And this is just my mesh for my middle panel. So I've cut that out here, and so this is the selvage right here. Again, the crosswise grain is usually the one with the direction of greatest stretch. So you can lay that on there. Mesh in leggings is awesome. You can buy mesh on that website that I showed you earlier, and you can see how cool it looks in leggings. I love mesh and leather in leggings. And so now I've just taken, my cool maroon spandex. It has similar stretch qualities to it, and I've cut out, my lower and my upper legging to it. And again, doing my stretch test and making sure that they are the same direction. I don't want to cut this one, with a different, grain line. They want to be parallel to each other. So I just have them cut out now. So I'm going to go over some sewing things that you can do for your leggings. So first of all, you have your serge seam. This is the best thing to do on your leggings. They create a nice smooth seam from the outside and a nice finished edge on the inside, and they are certainly the most stretchy seam. So you can stretch them to the limits and they won't pop. So serger is definitely the #1 choice, but you don't have to. You can use a zigzag, and you want to use a narrow zigzag. So here is just my Janome machine, and just locate your zigzag setting. You don't want the dashed zigzag, you just want the straight zigzag. So I have that set on C, and here I have, my greatest width is actually 5, so I want it a little bit on the smaller side. So I'm have it at about a 2 of, the width of my zigzag. And you can see here's my little zigzag stitch. And as you can see, it's not as smooth as the serging, but it still does stretch, and it looks like this. And as you can see, the 3/8 of an inch allowance are a lot better for the zigzag stitch. And the narrower, the better. You can have a wider one for top stitching and finishing the elastic and the hem. That's totally fine. And so you can just see you can see the little bumps, on either side of the zigzag stitch. But it does stretch, so it's great for leggings. And you can also use the stretch stitch setting on your sewing machine. So this is just my regular sewing machine, and if yours has a stretch stitch, it will probably have this little dial, and it will say SS, and that means stretch stitch. If not, it'll usually just be a stitch with sort of 2 lines on it in this sort of, stitch setting. But just read your instructor's manual for your sewing machine, and you can probably easily determine how to put your machine on the stretch stitch setting. And so here's a stretch stitch. It's actually a bit smoother. I would actually, would say a stretch stitch over a zigzag in the internal seams, but definitely a zigzag over stretch stitch in top stitching. So you can see it's a little bit smoother, not as, noticeable as the zigzag. So stretch stitch is great. 3/8 of an allowance on your patterns. Okay, so sequence of sewing leggings. Sew the various panel seams of each right and left leg. Stitch the front crotch seams together of the right and left leg. Stitch the back crotch seams together of right and left leg. Stitch the inseam of right and left leg in a continuous seam, passing over crotch point. Finish the waist, finish the hem, and wear 7 steps, and you're done. So what you always want to do is assemble each leg as a whole. So you want to sew the panel seams first before you put them together. You don't want to, sew the lower leg pieces together on each leg and then, try and do a circular seam for the insert. No, you want to sew the legs together. So once you have all the panel seams together, it should just lay on top of your legging sloper and be the same size. So, you just pin and serge or sew together. I have my first seam right here, and a good, tip if you're using mesh, always top stitch it on the other side of the fabric. I don't like the look of leggings with mesh and the serging sort of flips to the mesh side and you can see the seams. I don't like that, so I always flip it to the other side. So here's my sort of opaque spandex, and I top stitch it. Top stitch with the zigzag, it looks really awesome. Don't top stitch with the stretch stitch. So as you can see, I've top stitched my allowance to the non-mesh side, so it just keeps it flat. And then you just sew that seam to the top seam, and we have, our panels together. So once the panels are together, you lay both legs right sides together, and you pin up the back and the front crotch seams. So front to front, back to back on each leg. So you pin and you serge those together, like so. And then you actually, what you would do is you would take this layer, this top layer, and flip it up, open them. So this seam opened right sides together with this seam open right sides together. Those are right here, and you pin down each leg inseam. And you want to match up the panel seams as well on the inseam. And you just serge it in one continuous seam over the crotch point. So this is my crotch points, down one leg, up and down the other. So then you flip them right side out. Your leggings are so close to being done. Leggings are so simple and easy to sew. And from the elastic, what you do is you cut out the elastic, your waist measurement, and you actually minus about 2 inches And that includes, you know, an overlap as well. So you want to minus 2 inches from your waist measurement. Or what I do, I just take the elastic and I put it around my waist, and I include a 1 inch overlap, and I just cut the elastic where it's comfortable on my belly. That's what I suggest. Don't, you know, do the measuring tape and then measure the elastic. Just take your elastic and just wrap it around your waist, because, you know, each elastic is different stretch. So just do that. It's the easiest, and you'll be definitely more happy with it once it's, you know, sewn into your leggings. And then you know, place them in a circle, and you just overlap them about 1 inch, and you just sew around a box with your sewing machine. Doesn't even need to be, you know, a stretch or zigzag stitch. I just had it on my regular stitch setting. You match up. Always match up the overlap to the back of your leggings. It's the easiest way to determine which is the back and which is the front. Sometimes it's hard. So you just do that. So center the overlap at your center back seam, and then find the other half of your elastic and pin it to the front. And then you just simply stretch in and serge it into the waistline. You can zigzag or stretch stitch it in. I've just serged it. And then what you do is actually flip it into the inside like so, and then from the right side you top stitch it in place. So I've just used my zigzag to top stitch it down in place. And you always want to top stitch it close to, you know, the bottom edge of the elastic. And then you pin up your 3/4 of an inch hem allowance, and from the right side, I always like to top stitch from the right side. I just zigzagged around the hem of my leggings with a zigzag, and your leggings are done. So easy. So now I'm going to show you a little bit more of a complicated design. So this is a design that actually a style line wraps around the front to the back, and it has a band instead of, you know, an elastic. So again, I just using my same, you know, trace off that I use for my knee panel. I'm just going to ignore those lines, but we're going to draft the band first. So you just determine whatever band width you want. I find a 5-inch band is really great, 5 to 6 inch, and you just measure that from your waistline, and you measure that down on your leggings. So as you can see here, I've just drawn a parallel line to my waistline 5 inches down. So now we need to determine the placement of our style line. So I'm doing these leggings right here. So this style line is in the middle of the front. So I find my halfway line. So this is my side seam. It's about, you know, here. And then I divide that into 2. So this is about the halfway mark of my front side of my leg. So I establish my first point right here. So that's how you can determine, you know, a placement. You look, well, is it halfway between, you know, the side seam and the front? You know, is it 3/4 of a way? And that's how you can determine where to place the line on the legging sloper. And then you just sort of, you know, follow. I see that it's, you know, closer to the inseam on the back, so I'm just going to kind of curve around and then go straight into the back right here. It's not quite halfway, so I'm not going to do it, you know, here halfway. I'm going to do it a little bit more into the inseam. So just look at your sketch, look at your design, and just, you know, draw the lines accordingly. And then on curves, you want to do notches, so it's really easy to sew them back together. So I just do 2 notches, so I know. Then you take tracing paper, put it over top, and trace out your one section and include your notches and grain line and label. And then you just do it for the other side, you know, grain line, notches, and label. And then for the band, what you want to do is you actually want the band to be a little bit smaller than, you know, the attachment seam, because you want it to stretch in so it holds your leggings up and really creates that slimming effect on your tummy. So what I usually do is, usually the front or back curve is really, you know, of our crotch seam is really curved, so I just square it down from the, you know, the waistline at the top. If you have a straight crotch seam on front and back, just bring in the side, you know, the front about 1/2 inch or so. So I've just squared it down to create a square, and this little excess will be stretched in and it'll be totally fine. And then you actually fold your tracing paper in half and put the fold right on that center front line that we had. And then you go ahead and trace out your band, label your center back, And then you want to add seam allowance to the bottom and center back edge. This edge is on fold. We're having a folded band, so we don't need to finish the top. And so you cut that on fold, and I also cut it out while my tracing paper is still folded, so when I open it I have, you know, my perfect one piece, and I just label center back and do a notch at center front. So here are all my pattern pieces now. I've added my hem allowance to each side of my leggings. I've determined, you know, the stretch of the greatest stretch on my fabric. I'm using two different fabrics. I'm cutting one panel in this leather, and I'm cutting one in just plain black spandex. So when you're cutting it out, when you have these notches, the best is just to clip right into them. So I just clip about 1/8 of an inch into the notch along the seam allowance. This is really easy when, you know, you match them up when you're sewing them. I just have my band. You always want to cut your band on fold. So just have it, you know, on fold. And I actually cut my band so it's actually on the fabric's grain line with the lesser stretch, because I like really control my band, so I don't want too much stretch because I want it to hold things in along, you know, my belly. So I actually, you know, I determine the direction of greatest stretch, and I actually cut it opposite to that. So I don't want as much stretch in my band, but it still does provide enough stretch to, you know, get around me. It's like it acts as a control top, but you don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can cut it at the direction of greatest stretch as well, you know, running widthwise along your band. So I have all my pieces, and now, you know, I match up the notches. So here's the notch, and there's one right here, and I, you know, have one at the waist, so I'm assembling one leg and then the other. So here's my seam of my leather, my black spandex. I assemble each piece. You want to do the band last. So I've assembled each leg. I've placed them right sides together. I pin and I sew up the crotch seams of the back and the front. I open them up, I pin the crotches together and pin down the inseams, serge them up. For the band, you don't flip them right side out quite yet. So right now we have sewn them together, and we're going to leave leggings turned wrong side out. For the band, you want to actually open the band, so we're just, you know, unfolding this up here, and then we're folding it right sides together and stitching and sewing up our center back on either side of the fold. So we have that serged up, and then we flip it right side out, and I just sort of pin the seams together, and I pin mark the center front so I can pin it into my legging. So I have it sitting right sides together inside my legging with my center back seam of my band matching up to the center back seam of my legging, and then the front seam matching up to that front pin notch on my band. And then I just stretch serge in the band to the legging, and then as you can see, you can flip it up. Then I flipped it right side out, and I have my legging band in place. No elastic, it's just a folded top, serged in, and I have a cover stitch machine, so just, you know, for a difference, I've cover stitched the hem of my leggings. If you have a twin needle, that'll be fine as well. But you can do a zigzag or, you know, whatever you would like to finish off your hem. Just make sure the stitch stretches. So here are my two finished leggings. I literally sewed these both in an afternoon. So, you know, they take no time to sew, and I tried them on and they fit great. Here's me in my new leggings. I wore them yesterday and they're super comfy. As you can see, the band comes right up to my belly button, which I really like, and they're super fitting, and I love the leather look. So, you know, these leggings do not look like I made them. It looks like I bought them, and they're awesome. I love them. I got lots of compliments on them yesterday too. So if you want to, you know, try it out, really just do these designs that I showed you, and you can, you know, practice, you know, slide by slide and make your own leggings version of these that I've showed you, and then you can kind of get the hang of it and, you know, start to do your own legging designs as well. So try out the drafts that I showed you in this web seminar. You'll have really cool leggings, and then you can try your own. And here's are the difference in sort of the hem finishes and the elastic waist in difference with the banded waist. I love the banded waist a lot. Okay, so now we have just enough time to go over grading. So if you find yourself, you know, when you're doing that sort of hip and waist measurement, the sizes don't go small enough or don't go big enough for you to fit in, you know, that half measurement. Two, it's so easy to grade these. All you do is you draw a line through all the auxiliary points of the crotch and waist seam. So I've just connected all these lines like so in all these different areas. And for the smallest size, what you do is you measure the difference between the two smallest sizes, and then you implement that on that same measurement on the inside of the smallest size line. So, you know, the difference between those two lines are about half an inch. So I measure in half an inch, and I know exactly where this point is because it's going to follow on that same auxiliary line as well as here. So you just measure this distance, measure that in, all along the leggings, and you know the hemline is the same for them all. And you do the same thing for the outside. So what you do is you measure the distance between these two, and you measure that out. If you want to grade in two sizes, then you would obviously just measure this distance and then double it. So you would measure in 1 inch inside or on the outside. So I would say you can do up to 3 sizes. So other than that, it starts to skew the pattern. So you can grade out 3 sizes and in 3 sizes using this technique. So that's something really beneficial that you can do if you're finding yourself, you know, you're doing that customization and, you know, you find your, you know, hip measurement is, you know, falling inside the legging sloper. You can just grade in, you know, 3 sizes and you should find a size that will sort of hit that measurement for you. And I'm just going to quickly show you guys how to do shorts or capris. It's so easy. So you just determine, you know, the line of which you want your shorts to be and capris. And if you want this sort of band on your shorts or even on the capris, what you do is you measure the opening and then you take away 1 inch. So you want the band to stretch into, you know, the hem, and you do it like really the same way as the waistband. You cut it on a fold and you stretch it in and you sew it in a circular way, and you don't need to hem the shorts. You have sort of a fitted band. You can do that on the edge of the capris or the edge of the shorts, or you can just, you know, add your 3/4 of an inch and just hem it. So to make shorts, you can just crop it first and then draw in any style lines you want. Do the same thing. You can do the waistband here. Like really the possibilities are endless. You can, you know, go back to one of your stylized patterns and just cut it off and use the existing style lines. So really it's super easy to do. And I just have a couple minutes left for some questions. If anyone has any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Okay, so this question might have came in before you covered it, but I understand this web seminar will include option of using a underbelly maternity waistband. How would I contour this waistband to make a maternity legging?
Yeah, so that's really, yeah, doing that banded waist is really suitable for maternity. You might want the band a little thicker if you know, want a maternity. I would just sort of measure around, you know, the pregnant belly and then use, you know, that as a guideline in cutting the band. And the great thing about that is you can cut a thicker band, you know, for the maternity legging and then stitch rip it out and then include sew on, you know, a thinner band once, you know, the baby comes. So that's something that you can do. But yeah, I just showed how to add the band and how to stretch it into the legging. So yeah.
Okay, great webinar. Are there other web seminars like this for other Slopers?
There, I believe there are some. I am doing a web seminar on our knit top and dress sloper. I believe there is one on our skirt sloper as well. I think, Allie, we can include those in the thank you email, all our other webinars on slopers. But coming up, I do have another live web seminar in the next couple weeks on how to, you know, create wardrobe basics out of our knit top and dress sloper. So that'll be great.
Okay, great. Well, we are out of time, but I would like to thank everyone for attending the web seminar today. And if you have any last minute questions for Meg, please go ahead and type them in now. Otherwise, you can send them to answers@bertastyle.com. And again, that's answers@bertastyle.com, and Meg can answer them offline. So you will receive a copy of this recording in your thank you email on Thursday, along with the legging sloper. So thank you all for attending and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.